Good afternoon and welcome to another Facebook Live. My name is John Smith. I'm the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. Sue Mount-Stevens, who's the Police and Crime Commissioner, is on leave this week, having a well-earned break. So I'm chairing my first Facebook Live and I'm really looking forward to it. I've been Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for 4 weeks now. My role is to support the Police and Crime Commissioner and lead on certain priorities, including reducing serious violence, reducing reoffending, criminal justice system, which I think we're going to talk about later. And I'm also going to be working with the police and other partners to make sure that policing and crime services are fit for purpose as we do gradually emerge from the restrictions over the next few weeks and months. Since starting last month, it's certainly been a very busy time supporting the PCC, Avon and Somerset Police, and of course, most importantly, our local communities. Over the last few weeks, and certainly for the first few weeks of the lockdown, I was at home watching these Facebook Live events, and I found them really informative. And I've had a lot of feedback from communities that they find it very helpful to hear from Andy and hear about his views on current issues. The conversations have offered clarity during the uncertain and often confusing times. And as we continue to all navigate our way through this new normal, I think it's really important that the PCC, her team, and even Somerset Police continue to reassure and support our communities. So welcome, and Andy, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you, John, for the opportunity to speak. What I agreed with my team and talked to my workforce about at the start of this crisis when we first went into lockdown was that we wanted to be closer to our communities because of the way in which we engaged with them and worked with them and kept them safe during what is an incredibly worrying and unprecedented time. And the communities themselves, we've seen them wrap around each other, support vulnerable people, and that's a great thing that we're seeing from this crisis. But we're also seeing some tremendous innovation from the police and my teams, and hopefully I'll have a chance to talk about this. One of the ways which we're innovating is the ways that we're engaging with the public. This is a conversation today. People watching, engaging with the OPCC, can send questions in and we talk about them. But my teams have been setting up neighbourhood Facebook websites. Some of them are having Facebook beat surgeries. They're using social media and other media to engage with people who are maybe at home a lot more. So if you want to get involved in that, have a look at our website, click on My Local Neighbourhood Team, and you'll see the range of opportunities open to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. Yes, I participated in a virtual Zoom community meeting organised by South Gloucestershire Race Equality Network a couple of weeks ago. That was very good. We've just got to find different ways of doing these things now, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. Yeah,
that's great. Okay, we'll get on with the questions then. Over a week ago now, the Prime Minister announced an easing of lockdown, which now allows people to travel for exercise and non-essential businesses to start opening back up. Since this announcement, have the police seen a change in the number of fines being issued?
Well, we have seen a change. We anticipated a change in the reporting behaviour of the public because the amount of reasons for people to be outside expanded. Rather than the question from the police, what are you doing out? The question would be, who are you with? Because of the restrictions that still exist around the gatherings of people to stop transmission between households. So we've seen a gradual reduction in the number of reports. Just to be specific, we had 245 reports yesterday. This warm weather does tend to lead to a few more, but bear in mind at the early stage of the crisis a few weeks ago, we were getting well over 1,000 reports a day. We issued 4 tickets yesterday. Enforcement tickets, and since the regulations changed, we've issued 10, which when you consider the amount of activity by the police, really does emphasise just how much encouragement, explanation and engagement and working in partnership with our communities to keep the R number down and to get through this crisis as quickly as possible.
Excellent, thank you. I went out on a tour with your team in Easton on Friday night and went up and down Stapleton Road, which was very quiet. It was pleasing to see. I was on Radio Somerset plugging this Facebook Live earlier this morning, and there was certainly concern raised there, particularly about yesterday actually with the really hot weather, and particularly about Weston and the issues there. Have you got anything specific to say about that?
Well, a word of caution, John. We try not to use the word quiet in policing.
I was warned on the time, actually.
It tends to lead to bad things happening. So
I had to put 10p in the pot. Yeah,
I'll blame you if anything bad happens now. We know that our community, almost 1.7 million people, have a wide variety of views and opinions. Some are desperate to get out, and we can understand that, can't we? Some are actually very frightened and very concerned about people getting out. And so we need to take a line that brings these two different views together. People are allowed out to exercise, to go to work, to buy food, shopping, and other reasons. What they're encouraged to do, although this is not law, is respect the 2-metre social distance. What they're not allowed to do in the law is to gather 3 or more from different households. So that's where we have an enforcement responsibility if we see those situations, but we will always engage with people and encourage first. So if people are out and they're respecting social distancing, we'd say that's good. And we would ask people to continue to be responsible, and they have been very responsible.
Yes.
So if you're driving somewhere, try and be confident that you're going to be able to park and that you won't have to compromise the guidance that's offered.
Okay, thank you for that, Andy. Okay, we'll move on to another question now. I know you and Sue have previously spoken about how certain types of crime reduced during the lockdown quite significantly. With lockdown restrictions easing slightly, has Avon and Somerset Police seen a rise in any specific crime types?
We are seeing a gradual return of the number of calls and the demands that are placed on the officers. The additional demand is obviously COVID. We had 245 calls yesterday. I checked on our data management systems just before I came in this room today. We've currently got, it gives people listening an idea of the demands. We've got 236 logs on our screens which we need to attend, which is a reasonable amount, not abnormal, but that's increasing every day. A week or so ago that was averaging under 200. Just to indicate to people how busy we are, in the last 24 hours we've arrested 81 people. We are very much pursuing our goal of fighting crime, serving people, protecting people and working with them. And actually an indication of yesterday that things are maybe returning to normal in some of our demand levels. We had 25 collisions on our roads yesterday. That we attended. That is about normal, actually.
Right.
We're entering a period where we're highlighting a speed campaign. Anyone using the roads, do not be surprised if you see police officers, speed vans, people doing enforcement. We need to keep you safe on the roads.
That's good to hear. As you know, Sue's probably most frequent contact subject is speeding and safety on the roads. Okay, I mean, when you look at the picture and with crime starting to increase, Andy, what is it that concerns you the most, would you say?
We need, as we return to normality to make sure we're in a fit state. And John, we've spent a lot of time talking about how we've reduced backlogs, done quite a lot of housekeeping, reduced the number of people who are wanted for questioning by the police, really significantly reduced through lockdown. We're running a little bit of a campaign this week on outstanding warrants. And I hope the people listening are reassured by this. If you're wanted on warrant by the courts now, then actually we're going to be looking for you. We're not going to overwhelm the criminal justice system, but we are arresting those people. In terms of what worries me, apart from the mental health and well-being of safety of my team, there is a concern about growing backlogs in the criminal justice system. It should come as no surprise to anyone that there's a backlog growing, because there are very few, if any, not guilty trials taking place in courts and Crown Courts, magistrates' courts. We were, I believe, the first police force area in the country to set up a virtual remand court, and we've put over 500 people through those now, very successful. So although it's no surprise those backlogs are growing, what does very much concern me is the fact that there are not yet plans that I think are adequate to deal with those backlogs. Before we went into COVID, victims of crime were having to wait too long to have their cases heard in many cases. And actually, if that situation is worsening, we need to do something about it. And John, I know you might want to say something about your role in this, but I know that yesterday you chaired you called and chaired an emergency local criminal justice board, where we talked about that, and indeed we escalated some concerns to the national board.
Yes, we did. Yes, as you know, it was an issue before the crisis and the virus, but the current situation, we've only just this week had Crown Court's trials restart, and that's on a much reduced basis, so the backlog is growing. Yes, I did chair the Criminal Justice Board earlier in the week. I think we've made some good progress. We work closely, don't we, with the residing judge and the Chief Crown Prosecutor for our area and with other key partners. But there's a lot more work needed. And Sue, with her national role and her focus on victims, I'm sure will play a big part in that as well. Okay, thank you, Andy. This weekend is Eid, marking the end of Ramadan. Eid is a time of celebration for communities and the coming together of families and friends. This year's celebrations, of course, will be very different. I know Radio Bristol are involved in a virtual Grand Iftar event, and I think there is some stuff going on tonight as well. Where can local people go to find out how to celebrate Eid while adhering to the social distancing, Andy?
Well, first of all, this is not the first or by means the only significant religious event that has been disrupted. We've been in lockdown through Easter, actually.
Of course.
So what I would say is that the British Council of Muslims has been very strong in supporting a call for no gatherings, no iftars that would obviously breach the regulations, either in mosques or in public places. And I've got to say, working with the Muslim community in Bristol, we have an independent advisory group from the mosques in Bristol and North Somerset. There's been tremendous support for that. So if you want to find out how you can celebrate Eid, which is an incredibly important event, it significantly revolves around fasting and then breaking of bread together. So it's very difficult during lockdown. I would urge people to contact their local mosque. We know that a lot of very creative things are being done about the use of technology, lots of mediums where people can get together in technology now. But it's important to pay tribute to the generosity and community spirit of the Bristol Muslim community in particular, who I know have been cooking meals for homeless people and people who are vulnerable. They also continue to bowl me over with their kindness. Have been cooking meals for emergency workers and first responders, and very, very kindly delivered some food to police officers in the force over the last few days. And of course they enjoyed that act of kindness, and what makes it even more special is to know that they're valued by the community that they're here to serve. So it's an important time, and the community are finding different ways to come together and feel strong.
Thank you. Final question now. This week is Mental Health Awareness Week. The current health pandemic has been a stressful, anxious and uncertain time for a lot of us. Due to the pandemic, has Avon and Somerset Police seen an increase in the number of mental health call-outs?
I'll draw you away from the question before I come back to it, John. It was interesting to talk about how we're adapting and changing, and I'll talk about that in terms of mental ill health in a moment. But I visited our team at Bristol Airport today, and you think, well, what are the team at Bristol Airport doing? Because there aren't many planes flying in and out of there. But actually they're fully engaged in responding to crime, preventing crime, working proactively. I heard about how they'd responded to a local burglary, got the car back and arrested the 2 offenders within hours. We had a very significant theft of 19 very high value cars in one episode from the airport at the end of April. Within 12 hours, 18 of those cars were recovered at different locations through Bristol. So what I would say is that for those who are foolish and selfish enough to commit crime during this time, we're really rolling up our sleeves and using all our resources in different ways to make sure we stay in front of you. But naturally, coming back to your question, this is a difficult time for members of our community who let's say, already are suffering from mental ill health problems, never mind all of the pressures that are brought through the worries of COVID and lockdown, and fresh worries for all of us. So we attend about 50 reports of mental ill health crisis per day. We tend to be called, people might say, well, why are the police attending? We tend to be a service of first and last resort for mental ill health crisis, when sometimes, say, other capabilities and services are not available, or indeed people are putting themselves in danger or are putting other people in danger, which is more unusual, but it can happen. We have made a similar amount of detentions under Section 136 of the Mental Health Act that we normally make. The number of calls, about 50, is slightly down actually, 50 per day.
Right.
Slightly down, but we are concerned that as lockdown is further released, as we all hope it will be, especially if we can comply with the guidances out there, that actually there may be a surge in the number and volume of cases that come to our attention as people actually come out of their houses. What I would also say about the cases that we are being called to and experiencing, they seem to be involving more serious circumstances, maybe of self-harm or distress.
Right.
So it's a tough time for all of the people.
You talked earlier about the impact on your officers and staff and their mental well-being. Is there anything more you want to say about that?
Well, hopefully you can see from these values behind us what we stand for, and furthest away from me is caring. We care about victims of crime, we care about safety, we care about the quality of work we do, but that needs to start by caring for each other, and we've really tried to pay attention to that through COVID. One of the things we also wanted to say when we came out of this was that we feel closer to each other. We did run a wellbeing survey, and we found that our workforce, significantly high numbers, high 80%, feel cared for or supported by their line managers and the organisation. Now, of course, anything less than 100% is not a position to be crowing about, is it? But we feel that's been important. We've got lots of facilities, practical help for people who are struggling, from a process we call TRIM, right through to a helpline and an occupational health unit. And we've got a wellbeing landing site on our intranet, which we call Pocketbook. So it's not something we're at all complacent about, John, because policing is an incredibly difficult job. If you think about immersing yourself in the most difficult situations in people's lives, including sudden or unexpected death, and we've talked about crime, we've talked about road collisions, actually that is a lot of emotion to deal with. So it's really important that we support the people doing that very difficult job.
Yes, as I said, I spent some time with your officers on Friday. Some of them were talking about just the simple fact of coming back from a shift and not knowing whether they should hug their children and that sort of thing. And those sort of stresses do take their toll, don't they? So,
yeah.
Thank you very much. I would just like to add to that point by saying thank you very much to all of Andy's officers and staff who are doing such a great job, along with all the other emergency services as well in these difficult circumstances. We do all really appreciate it. I'd also just like to add, and following on from my participation in the Radio Somerset call this morning, please do be responsible this weekend. It is a very good weather forecast. Please be thoughtful about where you're going. If you're planning to head out somewhere, please think about what it'll be like there. Will you be able to effectively socially distance? Will you be able to park safely? Please do bear that in mind. As Andy has said before, we're only going to get out of this if we all work together. So thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. We will be doing this again next week, so if you've got any questions, please do send them in the same way. Thank you very much and stay safe.